stop fighting your body. You've tried to force your body. You trained more. You cut food harder. You controlled every detail of what you ate. And after all that effort, you ended up in the same place again. Pause. That doesn't mean you're weak. It doesn't mean you lack discipline. It means you've been fighting the wrong battle. Your body does not care about goals or timelines. It doesn't understand summer shape or numbers on a scale. What it cares about is survival. When food feels restricted, the body responds by holding on. When eating feels stressful, hunger signals get louder. And when pressure stays high for too long, weight stops responding the way you expect. This isn't failure, it's biology reacting to force. Putting reality on the table. Look at Japan. This is a society that eats rice every day. Not low carb, not keto, not afraid of starch. They are not obsessed with the gym. Working out is not the center of daily life. Weight loss is not a constant topic of conversation. And yet, obesity rates remain strikingly low. This is not genetics. Japanese and Western bodies are not that different. It's not stronger willpower, and it's not people trying harder or suffering more. Nothing about their lifestyle looks extreme. So the difference isn't effort. It isn't discipline. It isn't motivation. The real question is simple. What is different about how eating and daily life are structured? From force to design. You didn't fail because you lacked control. You failed because your environment was controlling how you eat. Strength isn't about pushing harder or tightening restrictions. That kind of effort never lasts. Real strength shows up when you don't need to force yourself at all. When food is always available, portions are oversized, and eating has no rhythm, control quietly disappears. Not because you chose wrong, but because the setup makes it hard to choose at all. This was never a willpower problem. Willpower burns out. What lasts is design. Change the setup, and weight begins to respond without constant effort. 9 habits. How? Weight is quietly shaped. These habits are not instructions to do more. They don't ask you to push harder, eat less, or train longer. They don't demand discipline or motivation. Instead, they point to specific places where weight is shaped quietly every day. Small details, daily patterns, normal behaviors that don't feel important at the moment. Nothing here is extreme. Nothing requires force. Each habit shows how eating, appetite, and body weight respond to repetition and environment, not effort. Once you see where weight is being shaped, the struggle makes more sense. Habit 1. Taste is not instinct. You don't naturally love sugar. That preference was trained. In Japan, children are taught to eat as part of daily life. Food is regular. It's expected. It's not used as a reward. It's not comfort after stress. It's not something earned or taken away. Because of that, sweetness doesn't become emotional. What you call taste is rarely instinct. It's memory built through repetition. When sweet foods show up often, the brain learns to expect them. Over time, that expectation feels like preference, but learned taste can change. When exposure shifts, appetite shifts with it. And when appetite changes, eating patterns and body weight begin to follow. Habit 2. Convenience is not the enemy. Convenience is not what makes people gain weight. Wanting food to be easy and available is normal. It's how daily life works. The real issue is what kind of convenience surrounds you. When the easiest option is highly processed, oversized, and calorie-dense, eating more happens without intention. Not because you chose poorly, but because the setup nudges you in that direction all day long. In places like Japan, convenience often means simple meals, smaller portions, and familiar foods that don't overstimulate appetite. Because of that, convenience doesn't automatically lead to overeating. When the better option is also the easiest option, discipline becomes unnecessary. Eating stays consistent, portions stay reasonable, weight stays more stable. At that point, you're not trying to eat better. You're simply living inside a setup that supports it. Habit 3. Large portions. Teach the brain to eat more. The brain doesn't understand the idea of enough. It doesn't calculate calories. It doesn't measure nutrition. It recognizes one thing only. This is my portion. When food is served in large portions, finishing it feels normal. Stopping early feels incomplete, even if the body has already had enough. When portions are smaller, the opposite happens. Eating less feels finished. There is no sense of loss. This isn't a mindset issue. There's nothing to argue with, no forcing, no restriction, no rules. The brain responds to units, not intentions. Change the unit, and behavior follows quietly. Eating adjusts without resistance, and over time, body weight responds without pressure. Habit 4. Sugar isn't the immediate problem. Sugar itself isn't what causes weight gain overnight. The real issue is how much of it shows up and how often. When sweet foods are eaten frequently, the brain adapts. Sweetness feels weaker. Portions slowly grow. Cravings become louder. Over time, eating more sugar doesn't even feel excessive, it feels normal. But when exposure drops, perception changes. Less sugar tastes stronger. Smaller amounts feel satisfying again. The same thing happens when eating slows down. Giving the brain time allows appetite signals to reset. This doesn't require cutting sugar out completely. Extreme restriction usually backfires. What matters is reducing constant pressure. Lower frequency, lower intensity. As pressure eases, appetite recalibrates. And when appetite stabilizes, body weight follows. Habit 5. Eating rhythm shapes the brain. Irregular eating keeps the brain on alert. When meals happen at unpredictable times, the body doesn't know what to expect. That uncertainty triggers vigilance. Vigilance turns into craving, and cravings make eating feel urgent rather than intentional. This is how people end up overeating without planning to. Not because they lack control, but because the brain stays on edge. A steady eating rhythm changes that response. When meals come at consistent times, the brain lowers its internal alarms. Hunger signals become clearer. Cravings lose intensity. Portion sizes stabilize. Nothing dramatic happens overnight. There is no force involved. Discipline doesn't need to be loud or strict. It simply repeats. Over time, repetition teaches the brain that food is predictable. And when eating feels predictable, body weight becomes easier to regulate. Habit 6. Movement doesn't need a label. Movement doesn't need to be called a workout. It doesn't have to be scheduled, tracked, or pushed to exhaustion. In many daily lives, movement happens because life requires it. Walking to get somewhere, climbing stairs, standing up, sitting down, moving through space. These small movements add up. They burn energy quietly without stress or pressure. When movement is treated as punishment, people avoid it. When it's treated as a reward, it becomes inconsistent. But when the body is simply used, movement becomes automatic. There is no guilt attached, no compensation with food later, no cycle of earn and reward. Used regularly, the body stays active without resistance. And when daily movement stays consistent, body weight is easier to manage without forcing exercise into the day. Habit 7. Eating speed determines control. Eating fast is a reflex. It happens automatically, especially when people are busy, stressed, or distracted. Food goes in before the brain has time to register what's happening. Eating slowly is different. It's a choice. The brain needs time to process fullness. It doesn't react instantly to food. Signals of satiety arrive late, often well after the plate is empty. When eating is rushed, those signals come too late. By the time the brain speaks up, overeating has already happened. This isn't about manners or discipline, it's about timing. Slowing down gives the brain the time it needs to catch up. When signals arrive on time, portions naturally shrink. And when portions shrink without effort, body weight becomes easier to manage. Habit 8. Respecting the meal. Eating while distracted changes how much people eat. Phones, screens, and multitasking pull attention away from the body. Food becomes background noise. Bites happen without awareness. When this happens, the brain misses important signals. Hunger, fullness, and satisfaction all get muted. As a result, eating continues past the point of need. This isn't about tradition or table manners, it's about attention. The body relies on quiet to communicate. It sends subtle signals that can't compete with notifications, conversations, or rushing from one task to the next. When meals are given full attention, signals come through more clearly. Fullness is noticed earlier. Satisfaction arrives with less food. Over time, this simple shift reduces mindless eating. And when mindless eating drops, body weight becomes easier to regulate without effort. Habit 9. Eating is not a battle. When eating feels like a constant fight, the body resists. Restriction creates tension. Tension amplifies hunger, and hunger pushes the body to protect itself. This is why weight often becomes unstable during long periods of dieting. The body senses threat and responds by holding on. But when the fight stops, something changes. Eating becomes calmer, signals become clearer. The body no longer needs to defend itself. This isn't about trying to be thin, it's about creating stability. When food no longer feels scarce or stressful, appetite settles. Portions regulate themselves. Eating patterns smooth out. Cooperation replaces resistance. And when the body feels safe, weight stops swinging wildly. It doesn't drop overnight, it stabilizes. That stability is what makes long-term weight control possible. When stability becomes the default. When things are designed correctly, you don't need to force yourself into becoming someone else. There is no fight, no self-blame, no constant effort to stay on track. Eating settles. Movement feels natural, and weight becomes more stable, not because you're trying harder, but because the system supports it. Control doesn't come from restriction. It doesn't come from pressure or punishment. It comes from no longer being pulled in every direction by food, stress, or routine. This is what long-term weight control actually looks like. Quiet, repeatable, sustainable. Pause. Observe. Stay in command. If this helped you see eating and weight differently, tap like. Share it with someone who's tired of fighting their body, and let us know in the comments which habit stood out to you most.